Thanks for tuning into my video answering your top 10 questions about diving Truk Lagoon. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you're a diver. I'm also assuming that you are interested in shipwrecks. Both of those are a good start because that really is what the rest of this video is going to be about. So let's start right at the beginning with question number 1. Why dive Truk Lagoon? Now, you're diving through pieces of history. By 1944, this atoll was being used by the Japanese forces as a staging point for the Pacific theater of World War II. That means battleships came here to be repaired, to regroup. Merchant ships came here to deliver supplies to these battleships, restock the troops, and even prisoners of war were being brought here. Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, American forces were looking to react and hit the Japanese back. The American forces conducted several reconnaissance flights over these islands to see how many troops were stationed there, what the situation was. The Japanese noticed these flights and started moving their battleships out of the area, but they simply underestimated how fast the Americans would attack. So when the Americans started what's called Operation Hailstone on the 17th and 18th of February 1944, there were still some destroyers in these islands. There were plenty of merchant ships there. There were also a lot of crew still on board. All of those fell victim to Operation Hailstone, and you are diving, or you're getting an opportunity to dive on these wrecks and the cargo that is left today. Question number 2, how deep do I need to dive in order to see these shipwrecks? Now, if you've seen some of the information I posted on the Dark Horizon Diving website already, you know that the trip is open to any divers from advanced open water with wreck diving qualifications all the way up to hypoxic trimix rebreather divers. That is because some of the wrecks start as shallow as 10 to 12 meters below the surface, and some of the deeper wrecks go as deep as 65 meters. There's even one that goes to 70 meters, but considering what you might see on this wreck, there are nicer wrecks to see in slightly shallower waters. So really, whatever diving qualifications you have in this range, you will have an awesome trip and see awesome shipwrecks. Having said that, if you can plan for decompression dives, you will see more even of the shallower wrecks, those in the 30 to 35 meter range. If you're on a rebreather, you can change your profile, you can extend your dive time even more. So you're simply opening up your options. One thing that is true is that you're not going to see all of the wrecks on one single 12 diving day trip. So there's always something left and there's always a reason to come back. Question number 3, how does the trip even work? Now, the trip that Dark Horizon Diving is offering is organized together with Pete Mesley's Lust for Rust. We stay at Blue Lagoon Dive Resort and usually complete 2 dives per day with a 4-hour surface interval in between. So it is a land-based trip. Accommodation is in twin share rooms in the resort. These rooms are equipped with 2 queen beds. They have air conditioning, they have warm water, and there's also drinking water available all day. Now, there is an option to pay single supplement and have your room to yourself, and we have our meals in the resort's restaurant. Now, diving happens from the dive center that's directly adjacent to the resort, so it's like a 2-minute walk from your bed to the boat, really. The boats leave there in the morning and in the afternoon, and this is where it gets really good. These are small boats, so you will only ever have between 4 and 6 people on a boat, and there's only ever 1 boat going to each wreck. That means you do not have to fight through diver soup. You have the time to take that video, to explore the wreck, to really see the parts that you want to see. And that is something that between us and Pete, we really think is one of the best features of this trip, having those wrecks almost to yourself. Speaking of exploration, on to question number 4, where is Truk Lagoon and how do I get there? Now, Truk, as the lagoon is known today, is part of the Federated States of Micronesia. If you look at that on Google Maps, you could be forgiven for thinking that's just a piece of water in the Pacific Ocean. It's an island, a speck of an island, really, right in the Pacific. And getting there takes a few flights and quite a bit of time, no matter where you're coming from. So there's some fairness here. Unless another airline opens up another route in the next year or so, right now you would be coming with United, either from Guam or from Honolulu. How do you get there? For those coming from Europe and also for those coming from the States, it usually means a flight to either Japan or Korea. If you're coming from Asia, Manila is often a good option that you could travel through. And some of these obviously are subject to change. So if you have an idea where you might be traveling from, the easiest thing would be to give me an idea where you're coming from, and we'll have a look together. I would plan between 1 or 2 days travel time to get there and to go back, depending on your connection. Now, you may be wondering what this is all going to cost you. So our next question is, what is included in the trip price? Now, the trip price covers 12 diving days on Truk with 2 dives a day, your accommodation in a twin share room, and it also includes your airport transfers from Wenu Airport to the resort. That means that you will still have a few extra things to cover. So here is a look at the extras that you need to think about. The biggest one is going to be your flights. How much they cost is probably a little bit too early to answer, but we can happily take a look at potential connections from where you are, and it'll give you a better idea. Aside from your flights, you've got your meals. If you're diving rebreather, you have CCR tank hire. You also have Softenolime or your absorbent that you're going to use. If you're diving twin sets or doubles, you have the higher charge of that. If you're diving side mount, there will be a charge for the additional tank. And obviously there are charges for oxygen and any other gases you use. When it comes to oxygen, you will be charged what you've used. When it comes to trimix, again, you'll be charged the amount of helium that you use. And there's a corkage charge per tank of helium as well. To give you an idea, when I just went to Truk this past month in December 2023, I ended up with a bill of about $900 covering my meals, my gases, and hires. Now, that is excluding any alcoholic drinks, and it's also excluding my flights. One more thing on flight prices, don't scare yourself by looking at search engines like Skyscanner. They're very good normally, but because you're flying potentially from a smaller airport to another small airport, the connections can work out really expensively. It's often easier to look directly at airlines and take it from there. Question number 6, do I have to stay for 12 days? Well, my initial reaction would be you'll want to stay longer, but I understand that not everybody has enough vacation days to really dedicate 12 entire days to diving Truk Lagoon. That is why there is an option for you to leave early. For logistical reasons, we all need to arrive on the same day. You can arrive a day early, but we need to start diving on the same day simply because the first 2 days are usually spent working up to maximum depths, getting used to the logistics, finding a way of working best with the boat crew, and getting all of these things going and really kind of get into the groove for the rest of the trip. And it's important that we all start that together to really have a smooth and enjoyable trip. On to the next question, number 7. Why don't we go from a liveaboard? I'm sure if you've looked into diving Truk Lagoon, you've come across both liveaboard and land-based trips. Now, here are some of my main reasons to go together with Lust for Rust and to choose the land-based option. Now, over the course of 40 or so dives, Pete of Lust for Rust has built an amazing amount of knowledge not just about those wrecks, but he's also built an incredible support network on the island, whether that is logistics like having cylinders, having trained local staff, having an oxygen generation plant, or medical supplies that are not always available at the local hospital. These can be such simple supplies as whatever you need for an intravenous fluid supply. In addition, Pete brings a doctor on each trip, and he is also a chamber operator. That's important because there is a recompression chamber on the island, but it's not always manned. So that means you have the facility, but unless you have somebody qualified, you couldn't possibly use it. So for those reasons alone, I think this is a good option. Another reason is the proximity of the wrecks to the island and to the resort. Liveaboards give you range. They allow you to travel further from wherever you're starting and give you access to dive sites that you couldn't normally access. Now, most of the wrecks in Truk are within a 10 to 20-minute boat ride from the resort. So that means you don't have to actually travel far. There's a couple of exceptions to that, but you might not even choose to dive those wrecks. So you don't need range as such. In fact, what you will see is the liveaboards being moored up, sometimes visible from the resort, so you can almost wave at them. The other thing is, if you're staying land-based, you get a little bit of space to stretch your legs. So in between dives, or if you're maybe choosing to skip one of the dives, you can sit on your balcony, read a book, you can go for a walk by the mangroves, you could even rent a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard and pass the time that way without being restricted by being on a liveaboard. And we're already on question 8 out of 10. Can I do more than 2 dives in a day? Let's be honest. Most of us will be completing decompression dives in Truk Lagoon. So already completing 2 decompression dives per day over 12 consecutive days comes with a considerable level of risk. To mitigate that, we will actually take a break around halfway through the trip where we skip 1 afternoon dive followed by 1 morning dive. That gives us an entire 24 hours off and gives our bodies a bit of a chance to off-gas from the diving we have just done and the diving we're about to do. You're in charge of planning your dives. You are in charge of choosing your dive profile, choosing your level of conservatism. But fitting more than 2 deco dives in a day, or even aiming for that, is simply a high risk that you're taking. That's not the best idea if you're in such a remote place. We're happy to help you with suggestions for dive planning, but more than 2 dives a day for this time is simply not realistic. Following on from question number 8, here's question number 9. But the liveaboards do 5 dives a day. What do they do differently? Well, it all depends on how you're planning your dives and how you're spending your time on the wreck. If you're aiming to do something like 5 dives a day, then really what you're doing is you're diving a wreck and you're potentially taking off the highlights of that wreck. Within 2 or 3 days, one wreck will just merge with the other. It becomes really hard to, in your mind, keep apart which one is which and what you've seen. With the type of diving that most of us will do there with the planned decompression dives, you're spending more time on the parts of the wreck that you really want to see. I would guess that most of you will want to bring a camera, whether that is a GoPro with a video light or a bigger, more elaborate setup, doesn't really matter. In both cases, you'll need time to take that picture or film that clip of that particular set of gauges or that piece, that gun or that piece of artillery. You'll take the time. And if you're planning on 5 dives a day, that's not really going to happen. So on this trip, we're aiming for 2 quality dives per day with a long service interval to keep us all safe in a very, very remote place. Question number 10, last but not least, what are the diving conditions like? Now, Truk Lagoon is a tropical destination. That means year-round you get warm water around 28 to 30 degrees Celsius, and you have similar temperatures on land. There's also a chance of a rain shower, and they're proper tropical rain showers, so quite often over in 10-15 minutes, but intense whilst they are going. It's a good idea to bring a raincoat. Underwater, it is warm, as often the same temperature on the surface as it is at depth, but you still want full-length exposure protection just to prevent cuts and scrapes, because most of us will want to explore the inside of those wrecks, and getting a cut or something like that in tropical water is a bit of a recipe for an infection, so we want to minimize the risk of that happening as much as possible. In December, I dived in a dry suit, and yes, you know who you are. Some people were laughing at me, but only until we got caught in the rain on the way to one of the further away wrecks. And I was relatively comfortable, whereas if you're sitting there in the rain and the wind in a wetsuit, got a little bit cold. Obviously, this is complaining at a very high level from somebody that gets cold very easily. So a wetsuit or even a full-length lycra is very likely to be everything you need, but I'm happy to talk about why I took the dry suit or what I used in terms of undergarments, because obviously that makes a huge difference to the amount of heat you get. Okay, are you still here? Awesome. So time for a bonus question, right? Where do you sign up? Well, to join us in 2025 on our October-November trip to Truk Lagoon, you can do several things. You can send me an email at darkhorizondiving@gmail.com with more questions, or to let me know that you're interested or anything else. Or you can head directly to our website, darkhorizondiving.com. Check out the trips and expeditions section, and you'll find more information there. There's also a brochure. Happy to send you that. If you would like that, either drop me an email, post something in the comments here with your email or a different way of reaching you. And any other question, just put them in the comments and I'll be happy to reply. Hopefully see you soon.